On a sweltering summer morning in Silver Oaks, Alabama, Colonel Isaiah Bennett, 47 years old and serving as a physician in the U.S. Army Reserve, found himself driving down a lonely stretch of Highway 52. After 2 decades away, he was returning home to attend his father's funeral. The humid air hung heavy, and the cypress trees lining Main Street seemed to sway slowly in the southern breeze as he edged his car onto the gravel shoulder. He had only moments to catch his breath before a Dust Creek patrol car eased up behind him. Officer Trevor Mitchell, a lean man in his early 40s with a neatly creased uniform, stepped out of his squad car with the confidence of a man who'd ruled these roads for years. His badge caught the morning light as he regarded Isaiah's rental car with cool suspicion. "License and registration, please," Mitchell said, his tone clipped. Isaiah offered his driver's license first, keeping his palms visible on the steering wheel, hands at 10 and 2, a posture born of military precision. He did not reach for his military ID immediately, preferring a calm response that might diffuse any tension. But Officer Mitchell's stare held a glint of doubt the moment he saw Isaiah's name. "Is this your car, sir?" Mitchell asked, voice low and taut. "Yes," Officer Isaiah replied politely, his voice steady despite his fatigue. He could feel the weight of his uniform beneath his jacket medals from 3 tours overseas, yet none of it seemed to matter here. Mitchell's expression darkened as he glanced at the California plates. "I clocked you going a bit fast back there. You know the speed limit on this road," Mitchell pressed, though Isaiah was certain he had not exceeded 60 miles per hour. The implication was clear in this quiet town. A black man, even a decorated Army colonel, faced judgment before any explanation was offered. And so, under the merciless sun of Silver Oaks, Isaiah Bennett prepared himself for a confrontation that went far beyond a routine traffic stop. On returning to his childhood home, Isaiah was greeted by the sight of 2 familiar, comforting faces. His mother, Evelyn Bennett, now 68 and a devoted homemaker, stood on the front porch, her arms open wide. Wrinkles of time lined her gentle smile, which spoke of love that had sustained them all these years. As he stepped out of his car, the humid Alabama heat seemed to fade for a moment as his mother pulled him into a warm embrace. The scent of vanilla and freshly brewed coffee filled the air, carrying with it a flood of cherished memories from simpler days. Inside, his sister, Alicia Bennett, 38, dedicated to running the community center, watched quietly from the kitchen doorway. Her eyes, though kind, held a gravity born of 2 decades spent witnessing growing injustice in their hometown. Once Isaiah had settled into the living room, Alicia began to share what had changed in his absence. "Isaiah," she said softly, "things are not as they were when you left." Over the years, she explained, local white officers had grown more brazen in their harassment of black veterans, men who returned home hoping for peace, but instead found suspicion and prejudice. Their father, Reverend Matthew Bennett, now 72, had devoted his life to fighting for racial equality. As a Baptist minister, he had marched alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. during the Civil Rights Movement, preaching love and justice from the pulpit of Redemption Baptist Church. In recent seasons, he had meticulously documented a troubling pattern. Returning black servicemen were routinely stopped, searched, and even arrested on flimsy or fabricated charges. Among the most egregious examples was Officer Trevor Mitchell, a Dust Creek patrolman with a well-known history of racial animus. Reverend Bennett had uncovered clear evidence that Mitchell's misconduct dated back to his own dishonorable discharge from the Army and had even led to his public firing at one point, yet Mitchell had somehow been rehired, continuing his campaign of intimidation without consequence. As Evelyn poured sweet tea and Alicia unfurled a stack of handwritten reports, Isaiah felt a familiar surge of determination. In the room where he once dreamed of serving his country, he now confronted the painful reality that his father had been fighting a battle unseen by many, and that Isaiah, as a son and as a colonel, would soon join that fight. Late that night, Isaiah sat at the same kitchen table where he had once done his homework and dreamed of the future. Alicia had placed a thick folder in front of him, handwritten notes, official memos, in a sealed envelope marked top secret. His fingers trembled as he opened the envelope and discovered a classified personnel file for Trevor Mitchell. The document revealed that Mitchell had been dishonorably discharged from the Army for a series of racially motivated incidents. A closer look showed that upon returning to Silver Oaks, someone had altered his military records to read honorable clearing, the path for him to become a police officer. Isaiah felt a surge of pride for his father, Reverend Matthew Bennett, who had uncovered this information and confronted town leaders, Police Chief William Fletcher, and District Attorney Michael Reynolds long before Isaiah even received his commission. Each letter, each photograph, and each note painted a chilling picture of how deeply embedded prejudice had become in the town's institutions. Isaiah's heart pounded as he absorbed the implications. His father had not merely been documenting cases of harassment, he had been exposing a deliberate cover-up at the highest levels of local government. Suddenly, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen and read a single line from an unknown number. "You should stay away. Your father learned a bitter lesson." The words felt like a blow to the chest. In that moment, the warm kitchen transformed into a battleground. Reverend Bennett's sudden heart attack no longer seemed so ordinary. Panic and resolve intermingled in Isaiah's mind. With the funeral looming at dawn, Isaiah realized two truths: he could not walk away, and the danger that claimed his father's life was far from over. The fight for justice would demand everything he had and more. Early the next morning, a solemn hush fell over Redemption Baptist Church, the very place where Reverend Matthew Bennett had served faithfully for 40 years. Rows of folding chairs filled the sanctuary well before the first hymn was sung, with vehicles lining both sides of the street outside. Inside, the air was thick with grief and reverence as family, friends, and former parishioners gathered to pay their respects. Soft rays of sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, illuminating the wooden pews where generations had come to seek comfort. Isaiah stood at the front of the church dressed in his U.S. Army Reserve uniform. His shoulders bore the weight of his father's legacy medals, reflecting years of service, both in combat overseas and in civil rights advocacy at home. As he approached the podium, he glanced briefly at the photographs displayed alongside the altar, black and white images of his father marching with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., organizing voter registration drives and leading Sunday services with unwavering conviction. A collective sigh rippled through the congregation as they recalled the minister's many sacrifices. During the eulogy, Isaiah spoke of his father's unwavering commitment to justice, his belief that faith without action is empty, and the countless ways he had shaped Silver Oaks. The hush in the church deepened, with each word tears glistening on the faces of elders who remembered Reverend Bennett's fiery sermons and comforting prayers. For a moment, it seemed that the sanctuary itself might burst under the weight of shared memories and sorrow. Yet outside in the church parking lot, where dozens of vehicles were stationed, a tense undercurrent simmered. Officer Trevor Mitchell appeared in full Dust Creek PD uniform, standing near the back entrance. He lingered at the edge of the gathering, his pale eyes scanning the congregation with something more than polite curiosity. Each time Isaiah looked toward the windows, he thought he spotted Mitchell's silhouette beyond the glass, scrutinizing the attendees and their familiar faces. Despite all efforts to maintain composure, Isaiah felt a knot of tension tighten in his chest. He recognized that Mitchell's mere presence, so incongruous at his father's funeral, was a deliberate show of intimidation. The quiet dignity of the service clashed sharply with the unspoken threat looming outside. Friends exchanged uneasy glances, and a gentle murmur rose among families who had once trusted the local police unreservedly. Even as the choir sang Amazing Grace, the strain of Mitchell's watchful gaze echoed in Isaiah's mind, reminding him that his father's fight against injustice was far from over. When the service concluded, the congregation stood in solemn procession, ready to follow the casket to the cemetery. Yet before anyone could leave their seats, Isaiah stepped back to the podium one last time. His voice, firm but respectful, addressed both those inside and the officer beyond the doors. "My father believed that love and justice walk hand in hand. We are here today not only to say farewell, but to honor his work. Let this be a reminder that we will carry on his mission, come what may." With that, the congregation rose as one, carrying the weight of both sorrow and determination. Heads bowed in silent prayer, they filed out of the sanctuary and into the bright morning sun, where the glare of Mitchell's patrol car lights flickered like a warning. In that moment, it was clear that the peaceful farewell would soon give way to a battle for truth, one that would test the very soul of Silver Oaks. As the funeral procession exited the church and the casket was gently placed into the waiting hearse, Isaiah supported his mother Evelyn and his sister Alicia as they descended the steps. The morning sun cast long shadows across the crowd, its warmth doing little to soothe the chill of grief. Just as they reached the bottom of the stoop, a stern voice cut through the hushed whispers. "Sir, I need to see your identification right now." It was Officer Trevor Mitchell blocking their path, with his arms folded and jaw set. Isaiah paused, guiding his mother to a safe spot behind him and offering a measured response. "Officer, I am Lieutenant Colonel Isaiah Bennett, U.S. Army Reserve, and I am retrieving my military ID from my car. I kindly ask that you wait until my family is settled." He gestured toward Evelyn and Alicia, their eyes brimming with pain. Instead of stepping aside, Mitchell drew his service pistol and leveled it at Isaiah's temple, his grip steady and unyielding. "Down on your knees," now he barked, his words echoing off the gravestone markers in the cemetery. The congregation, still gathered for the graveside service, gasped in unison. Fingers fumbled for phones. Several parishioners raised their devices, cameras capturing every tense second as Mitchell forced Isaiah onto his knees before the mourners. The sight of a decorated Army officer fresh from delivering his father's eulogy, compelled to kneel under threat of lethal force, was both surreal and devastating. Within moments, Police Chief William Fletcher strode forward in his own uniform, his expression grave. "Officer Mitchell, drop your weapon this instant," Fletcher commanded, his voice firm enough to cut through the tension. Mitchell hesitated, the weight of his weapon trembling slightly in his hand before he finally lowered it, sliding the pistol back into its holster. The crowd exhaled collectively, a mixture of relief and indignation rippling through their ranks. Isaiah rose smoothly, wiping dust from his uniform. Though shaken, his posture remained dignified, his father's legacy of calm resolve guiding him. All around, whispers of disbelief swirled. How could a man entrusted to protect and serve behave with such arrogance and cruelty? The cameras continued to record as Mitchell was escorted away, and murmurs of outrage turned to determined conversation. Isaiah guided his family toward the hearse, determined that this moment, captured on so many screens, would serve as a turning point. Under the watchful eyes of his community, he vowed that his father's fight against injustice would not end at the graveside, but would continue until every abuse of power was exposed, and every life, regardless of race, was held in equal regard. In the days following the funeral, a video of the confrontation spread across social media, accumulating millions of views and drawing national attention. The Department of Defense issued a statement expressing grave concern. 3 television networks dispatched reporters to Silver Oaks, and civil rights organizations urged an immediate inquiry into Officer Mitchell's conduct. Faced with this wave of scrutiny, and after receiving anonymous threats warning him to drop the matter, Isaiah decided to postpone his return to his Army Reserve post. More troubling still was a nagging suspicion that his father's death had not been a simple heart attack. One afternoon, Isaiah met with Zoe Mitchell at a small corner cafe. Zoe, a 30-year-old investigative reporter for the Silver Oaks Gazette, leaned forward over her coffee and lowered her voice. "Your father uncovered damning evidence before he died," she explained carefully, sliding a file across the table. "Trevor Mitchell's personnel records were altered to remove any mark of a dishonorable discharge. That's why he qualified for the police force despite his documented history of racial incidents while in the Army." Isaiah's eyes widened as he examined the documents, original discharge papers stamped dishonorable alongside a later version marked honorable. Zoe continued, "Your father planned to go public with this information. He believed it connected to a larger pattern of police corruption in Dust Creek." At that moment, Major Carla Hensley of the Pentagon entered the cafe. Hensley, a 50-year-old representative for the Secretary of Defense, greeted Isaiah with a solemn nod before taking the seat beside him. "I've been following the coverage," she said softly. "The department will provide you and your family both legal assistance and security support. We cannot let this stand." Her unwavering tone conveyed the full weight of military authority backing Isaiah's quest for justice. As the 3 of them exchanged details, Zoe's investigative leads, Isaiah's lingering doubts about his father's passing, and Major Hensley's promise of resources, a clear path forward emerged. The pieces were coming together: Mitchell's tampered records, his aggressive behavior at the funeral, and now the growing realization that Reverend Bennett's death may have been neither accidental nor natural. Before leaving the cafe, Major Hensley placed a reassuring hand on Isaiah's shoulder. "You are not alone," she affirmed. "We will uncover the truth." As Isaiah watched her depart, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and unease, knowing that powerful forces were already mobilizing to preserve their secrets, and that the fight for justice would require every ounce of courage he had left. Under the guidance of Detective James Mitchell, a 55-year-old investigator with the Silver Oaks Police Department, Isaiah delved deeper into the mystery that had cost his father his life. Mitchell, a seasoned detective known for his quiet integrity, arranged to meet Isaiah at a small conference room in the old courthouse. Spreadsheets and faded newspaper clippings lay spread across the table evidence his father had painstakingly gathered before his untimely death. Your father uncovered something I've been unable to fully grasp until now, Mitchell began, his voice low and steady. He called it the Heritage Guard. Isaiah listened intently as Mitchell explained that this covert organization had quietly operated since 1968, its origins tied to a so-called Veterans Association in neighboring counties. Though it bore no official insignia, the Heritage Guard's mission was chillingly clear: to preserve a white supremacy order in the South by targeting black veterans who return home with newfound respect and influence. Mitchell slid a folder toward Isaiah containing scattered reports and personal testimonies. One folder documented the ordeal of Terrence Washington, a former Marine sergeant who had dutifully served 2 tours in Iraq. Washington's traffic stops numbered in the double digits, each incident seemingly prompted by Officer Trevor Mitchell himself. Another file detailed James Booker, a decorated Army corporal who had earned a Bronze Star, being falsely arrested for suspicious behavior while walking home from his part-time job. Booker lost his position and his reputation as a direct consequence. The most harrowing account traced Nathan Green's grief as he watched his younger brother Michael, a hero who survived an IED explosion in Afghanistan, suffer a seizure during custody after being wrongfully detained. Michael never recovered. These aren't isolated incidents, Mitchell said, sliding a faded typewritten note across the table. They all align with Reverend Bennett's investigation. Every black veteran who stood firm against harassment was systematically stripped of dignity, sometimes even their lives. Isaiah Michael's gaze sharpened as he absorbed each story. Reverend Bennett had compiled these accounts, anticipating that they formed part of a broader pattern. The Heritage Guard, Mitchell continued, had enlisted local law enforcement, including Chief Fletcher and even District Attorney Reynolds, to conceal evidence and silence dissent. Isaiah felt a chill settle over him. His father's mission had always been to expose injustice, but now the scale of that injustice was fully apparent: an entrenched network bent on preserving racial hierarchy by any means necessary. As Mitchell stood and offered Isaiah a firm handshake, he added, "My father warned me there would be pushback, but he also believed truth could outlast any lie. We owe it to him to finish what he started." Outside the courthouse window, the late afternoon sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the steps, shadows that would no longer hide the Heritage Guard's crimes from the light of justice. In the days that followed, Isaiah immersed himself in the audio recordings his father had left behind. In one brittle cassette, the voices of Officer Mitchell, Chief Fletcher, and District Attorney Reynolds echoed through the static as they met in a dimly lit back room of the town hall. Isaiah pressed play and heard Mitchell declare, "The Reverend Bennett knows too much. He has to be silenced." Chief Fletcher's voice rumbled in agreement. "Do what you must, is make it look accidental." Reynolds, usually so measured, spoke last. "No loose ends. If he stays alive, we all stay at risk." Reeling from this revelation, Isaiah confronted another piece of damning evidence that afternoon. Courtesy of Dr. Melissa Chen at Silver Oaks Memorial, a security camera recording from the community meeting showed Mitchell standing alone at the refreshment table, watching his father pour coffee. The clip suddenly cut to Mitchell leaning close and stirring the Reverend's cup. Isaiah's heart pounded as he watched the slow swirl of cream, obscuring any signs of tampering, but Dr. Chen's follow-up toxicology confirmed her suspicion. The Reverend's blood work, drawn after his collapse, contained trace amounts of aconite, a plant toxin known to cause fatal arrhythmias that mimic a heart attack. Almost overnight, the threats against the Bennett family escalated. Isaiah discovered surveillance cameras planted near his mother's car, cameras he had never installed, and noticed suspicious vehicles idling around Eleanor's safe house. Late one night, while returning from dinner with Alicia, Isaiah felt a sharp pain in his wrist as a shattering brick smashed through the window of his rented sedan. In the alley behind their block, he and Alicia fended off 2 masked attackers wielding blunt metal pipes, narrowly escaping with only bruises and shaken nerves. By then, Isaiah knew he could no longer rely on local law enforcement. The Heritage Guard's reach extended into the very institutions meant to protect him. He contacted Special Agent Diana Foster of the FBI's Civil Rights Division, requesting urgent intervention. Within 48 hours, federal agents arrived in Silver Oaks, establishing a field office and offering protective details for the Bennett family. As Isaiah watched the FBI unload evidence boxes in the Bennett living room, He felt a grim resolve settle over him. His father had died fighting for justice. Now it was Isaiah's turn to carry that torch and to ensure that the Heritage Guard's lethal ambitions were met with the full force of federal law. Under the leadership of Special Agent Diana Foster, 35 sharp-eyed and unwavering, the FBI launched a sweeping inquiry that reached far beyond the borders of Silver Oaks. Within days, federal investigators uncovered a web of illicit financial transactions, hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing from prominent families in town to key figures in law enforcement in the district attorney's office. Those wire transfers, once hidden in layers of shell corporations, finally exposed the Heritage Guard network as it stretched across 5 southern states, enlisting police officers, elected officials, and local businessmen in a conspiracy to preserve white supremacist power. Armed with bank statements, recorded conversations, and the Reverend's meticulously compiled dossier, the federal grand jury moved swiftly. Officer Trevor Mitchell was indicted on multiple counts of civil rights violations, witness intimidation, and conspiracy to commit murder. Chief William Fletcher, long suspected of orchestrating cover-ups, was convicted of obstruction and conspiracy, earning a 20-year federal sentence. District Attorney Michael Reynolds, implicated in forging documents and suppressing evidence, was disbarred and received 15 years behind bars. Over 60 members of the Heritage Guard, from small-town sheriffs to city councilmen, were arrested in coordinated raids across Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and South Carolina. Each took turns hearing their names called as handcuffs clicked and agents read the federal charges. In the midst of these high-profile prosecutions, the Bennett family turned their grief into action. Recognizing that systemic change required more than punishment, they founded the Reverend Matthew Bennett Veterans Rights Initiative. Under Alicia's stewardship, 38 and passionate about community service, the organization became a lifeline for Black veterans returning home. It offered legal aid, job placement assistance, and advocacy, ensuring that those who served their country would never again face the same pattern of harassment. As Isaiah Bennett watched the FBI safely escort his family to courthouse hearings, he felt both relief and resolve. The indictments marked a turning point for a community once mired in silence. Still, the work ahead would be long, rebuilding trust, rewriting policies, and healing wounds that span generations. Yet with the Heritage Guard dismantled and new protections in place, Silver Oaks and the region beyond finally stood on the threshold of a more just future. 1 year after the verdicts, Silver Oaks held a spring ceremony to honor Reverend Matthew Bennett and all who suffered under the Heritage Guard. A new monument carved with "Justice is Love" in public action stood in the town square, symbolizing how compassion and courage had reshaped the community. Residents gathered beneath cypress trees, sharing memories of the Reverend's dedication to equality. Tisha Williams, longtime advocate for reform, was inaugurated as Silver Oaks' first Black mayor. Beside her, Alicia Bennett took her seat on the newly formed Civilian Police Oversight Board, vowing that her father's principles of accountability and respectful dialogue would guide future policing policies. Inside Redemption Baptist Church, the fresh Reverend Matthew Bennett Veterans Support Center opened, providing legal aid, job assistance, and healthcare referrals for Black veterans who had once faced constant harassment. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Colonel Isaiah Bennett led the Reverend Matthew Bennett Veterans Rights Initiative, a federal program protecting veterans' civil rights nationwide. From his office near the Capitol, he and his team drafted guidelines to prevent discrimination of any veteran, regardless of race, replicating the Silver Oaks model across multiple states. As evening fell, Silver Oaks residents, once silent bystanders, celebrated a community renewed. Reverend Bennett's message rang clear. True justice lives in public acts of love, ensuring every person's dignity is honored. Through this challenging journey, we learn that courage and faith in justice are never in vain. When confronted with prejudice and violence, maintaining one's dignity and seeking the truth are the only ways to transform a decaying system. This story teaches us that justice can prevail through persistence, collaboration among all members of society, and an unwavering determination to stand against injustice. If I were the main character, I would continue building bridges between the community and law enforcement through education, dialogue, and transparency. I would advocate for enhanced multicultural training for police, strengthen independent oversight, and provide robust support for victims of racism. As for whether racism will be completely eradicated by 2050, I believe progress will be slow but real if each of us commits to change within ourselves. Social media will keep amplifying victims' voices. Youth education will foster a more understanding generation, and legal policies must be continuously reinforced. While we cannot guarantee that 2050 will mark the absolute end of racism, at the very least we can hope society will increasingly close the gap and nurture a spirit of mutual respect. Disclaimer. This story is entirely fictional. All characters and events are creations of the author and are not intended to reference or criticize any real person. It is designed to raise awareness of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating one another with respect and dignity. We firmly oppose all forms of violence, prejudice, and injustice. Please consider this before viewing.